Amen. We're in Early Writings 241 paragraph 2, 241 paragraph 2, and we're looking at Ellen White's depiction of the Advent movement. It's called the Advent Movement Illustrated, and what we've seen is that before the time of the end there's a period of darkness, and there are varying companies which I'm suggesting are the varying denominations in the Dark Ages, who are all bound together by a common doctrine or a common idea. They're in captivity to Babylon, we could say. At the time of the end, those people who had a countenance of light, those who are looking up to Jesus before the time of the end, they have the privilege of receiving the light of the first angel's message. The voice is given, fear God, give him glory, for the hour of judgment has come. And sometime later, even though they're still connected to those companies, everyone receives an opportunity of receiving that light. Some of those people who are still in darkness, they receive the light, and then they join their voices with the first angel to give the first angel's message. So that's a very short concept or idea of the first angel's message. You can see many concepts in that imagery that we already understand. What does it mean that in this history, where those people who had light here received the first angel's message, but they're still bound to the companies, and the companies are still bound together? What does it mean that they're still bound to the companies? What do we know about Millerite history, that in this history they're still bound to the companies?
They were still in their denomination.
Can't hear you.
I'm saying they were still in their denomination, in their churches.
And what do we know about Miller's position?
Miller's position is that he preached in this, he did not tell people to come out of there.
And what phrase does he use? His message was? Sister Emma? It was non-sectarian. He didn't believe in sects. So we can see all of that in the imagery if you're familiar with the history and then you read carefully into the parable. Then we saw the second angel. There's a disappointment. We can structure light, voice, voice, light. There's a nice chiasm there. The second angel arrives. He dispels the cloud or the disappointment. So not only do they acknowledge that Babylon has fallen, but they also begin with an ardent hope, which means an expectation that Jesus is about to return. They look back to him. Then angels start talking to this second angel, and after the conversation, then their messages or their voices unite. And when they unite, there's more glorious light that comes upon the people, and they too unite in the statement that, behold, the bridegroom cometh. So there are differences between them, between the first and the second angel. And my question that I was asking is, I saw a number of angels conversing with the one who had cried, Babylon is fallen, and these united with him in the cry, behold, the bridegroom cometh. So I'm asking, does this second angel change his message from Babylon is fallen to behold, the bridegroom cometh, or does he retain his message and the others just join him? And we've got different ideas, and I think we ended up with the question that I'm asking: how do we even identify what an angel is when we say first angel, second angel? Because we'll, I assume, realize that they're God's people. The people who did the first are the same people who did the second, the same people who did behold the bridegroom coming, all the same group of people. So we can't identify angels strictly by it's a new literal group of human beings. We can't do that, can we? Agree with that? So what do we mean when we say first angel, second angel, as an example? We mean the message is different. The message or the wording is changed. So every time you get a change in the message, that means you change the angel, or you have to reevaluate who and what that angel is and what he's doing. So I gave some examples. I'm saying the first angel's message we know is present truth all the way through history. If it's present truth all the way through history, does his message change as we go into the 19th century, the 20th century, and the 21st century? And if his message doesn't change, and he's still saying, fear God, give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come, is that not how we identify what the first angel is? It's by his message. It's not by a group of people. We don't say, in 1989, we're the fourth generation prophetically, probably the sixth or seventh literally, and because we're new people, we must be a new angel. Therefore, the first angel has a different message. Would we do that? No. We don't identify the literal fulfillment of who the person is. We just target it by the message that they're giving. And I think the argument that we use is the first angel's message goes all the way through, and it's the same wording.
I want to ask a question. And my question is, when it comes to April 19, you see that from 19 to April 19, that's the first angel message.
April 19th till?
From 19 to April 19, we see that the voice of the first angel message is the one that sounded. But when it comes to April 19, 18.
Sorry, what were you saying? You said August. I didn't hear the dates correctly.
Okay, August 11.
August 11.
Yeah, we see that the first angel message is the one that's sounding at that period. But when it comes to April 19, so I see that there's a silence in the first angel message. So
there's a
silence with the first angel message.
Silent the first angel.
Okay.
First angel message, and that one make other people to conclude that first angel message ended in April 19. So,
I've already suggested that the first angel's message goes to October 1844, and then it finishes.
So how could we see the voice of the first angel message in April 1944?
You can't see it in this story. You have to go to other stories or develop other lines of argument. But if you were going to just take this story, then it would stop on April the 19th. And I don't think we're opposed to that. We don't argue that. You've seen many people who do lines like this, 1 and 2, indicating that the first angel stopped. I don't think that's an incorrect way of saying something, because we're then going to take another argument that if you didn't accept the first angel, you can't be benefited by the second. We go to the line of Christ. John ends his ministry when Jesus picks his ministry up. He says, I must decrease, I must end to allow him to increase. Otherwise you'd have competing voices, competing messages. And you see that in the disciples fighting one another, John's and Jesus's. So I don't think it's invalid to do that it stops here in April the 19th. I think it's a valid application to make.
I think I have an argument where I can say these are two different angels and they are two different messages, but they are doing the same intended work. And I would argue and say that the one who is saying Babylon is fallen, he is telling the ones who have been tested by the first angel that they are fallen in the test. But the other messages who come with, behold the bridegroom cometh, they are comforting these who have passed the test, that behold, you have passed the test, but it's a message of hope that your bridegroom is about to come.
Okay. So, who still thinks that he changes his words? No one? You still think he changes his words? Why do you think he changes his words? According to the grammar. Tell me what you see in the grammar that makes you believe that.
when you read the 1 paragraph 2, it says, I saw a number of angels conversing with the one who had cried. So the name cry, the past tense of the name cry is cried. So it is the past tense. And for these angels to converse with the second angel, you must be silent first for them to converse.
They must be
Silent. You must stop crying for them to converse with the angels. So I'm saying, what he's saying, the angel who had cried, the second angel had cried, past tense. And after crying, now they converse with, he converses with the angels who have come to unite with him. So after they have conversed, then they join, and he's united with him in the cry. So they united in the cry because the bridegroom coming. So I don't see whether there is problem there.
okay. So he gave the message, Babylon is fallen. He stops because they're going to have a conversation, and then they pick up their messages again. So the fact that he stopped, I'm not sure is an argument, because he could have stopped and carried on giving the same message. So it seems to me that your argument is in the word united. And these united with him in the cry. So you're saying the word united means you say the same words. Yeah? Okay, Brother Rogers. What's your position?
Position still remains that he carries, the second angel gives the same message.
Why?
So my argument was, yesterday we were looking at the third angel, and we were saying the third angel is carrying through history. Then an angel comes and joins it. So the correct words from the Spirit of prophecy is that he joins his voice in the proclamation. So he joins the third angel in proclaiming, but the third angel does not change his message and begin to say Babylon is fallen, is fallen. What you are told, this angel comes in to give power to the message of the third angel. So the third angel still saying, don't receive the image and the mark of the beast, but that angel comes to give power to that message.
Anything else? So we're picking up the word united, and people are saying the word united means you have to be saying the same words. Yeah? So we're on 241 paragraph 2. Let's jump forward to the passage we read yesterday, which is 277 paragraph 1. Before we read 277 paragraph 1, my brother, I want to ask you a question. We speak about the loud cry in that story, and he says another angel joined the third. Do you agree that that angel that came down was the angel of Revelation 18 that we read yesterday? And the angel of Revelation 18 says what?
Pass.
Says what?
You have two angels in Revelation 18. Pass 1 to 3 or pass 4.
The one that lightens the earth with his glory. We don't have two angels, we only have one angel. The other one is just a voice. It doesn't say it's angels, but it says the one who lightens the earth with his glory.
Babylon is fallen.
So it says Babylon is fallen, and when he comes and joins, I'll use the word join, the third angel, does anybody change their message? Does the third still say the third, and the second still say the second?
No.
They change? They say the same? Yeah?
Yeah.
The third is still saying, this is what Brother Roger's saying, the third is still saying the same thing, and now the second comes and joins him, and he's when he joins him, he's saying Babylon is fallen, the other one's saying the mark of the beast. Agree with that? Okay, so second sentence, 277 paragraph 1. Then I saw another mighty angel commissioned to descend to the earth. Are you reading that one? Are you there? I'm asking you, yeah? Then what does it say after earth? To unite what? With? Okay, so when he unites his voice with the third angel, you tell me what that what that looks like, what that means. When he unites his voice with the third angel, tell me how that works.
So before I tell you, I'm saying the way the first angel is structured is different from the second angel. So when you are using the example of the third angel, I'm worried.
You're
Worried.
You're worried.
Yeah. Because we said the first angel arrived, and then the empowerment in 1840, you have the first angel plus the people. So it is different from the second angel.
So let me just clarify. When you said I said something and now you're worried, all I read was spirit of prophecy. I didn't.
The example which you see.
No, but I didn't do anything. I just said that's what the spirit of prophecy says, and that's what the spirit of prophecy says. That's all. I know. Now all I'm doing is going to another spirit of prophecy quote. So I'm not sure why you're worried. All I asked you was in 277, when this angel unites with the third angel, tell me what that looks like.
It's showing the him.
Sorry?
It's showing the him.
And it says the word unite. Tell me what the word unite means in that context.
He came to do the same work.
The same work. What's the third angel's work? What's the work of the third angel?
One.
Yeah, but all of them are warning. Specifically, what's his work?
One against the mark of the beast.
Mark of the beast. We'll just say mark of the beast. So when this angel unites with the third angel, what's this angel saying? When he unites. Is this angel saying mark of the beast?
No.
What's he saying?
Come out.
Is he?
Come out.
Is he? Well, I can read the passage to you. He unites his voice with the third angel, and then it says, the light which attended this angel penetrated everywhere as he cried, Babylon is fallen. He's not crying, come out of her. He's crying, Babylon is fallen. Do you agree with that? When did he cry, Babylon is fallen?
When?
Before he came down to earth, when he came down to earth, or afterwards? When he came down. So my second question is, when did he unite with the third angel? Before he came down, when he came down, or after he came down? When did he unite?
Where is the third angel first?
Sorry?
Where is the third angel?
Where? In the passage? Or in... Well, I'm not sure what your question is.
So you asked me where do they unite?
I asked, where did they unite? Did he unite with the third angel before he came down to earth? Or did he unite with the third angel when he came down to earth? Or did he unite after he came down?
When he came down.
So he unites when he comes down, and he speaks when he comes down. You're not sure on but which bit? Because I asked you carefully both things and you came up with careful answers. So I'll repeat it again then. When did he cry mightily, Babylon is fallen? Before he comes down, when he comes down, or afterwards? Your previous answer was when he came down. That's when he cried. So you hold on to that? When did he unite? Before, at, or after?
When?
Okay, so the uniting and the speaking are at the same point when he comes down. So when he united, and it says, what did he unite? In the verse, what does he unite? It says unite his voice. So you know when the uniting is when the voice is. And what is his voice saying? So the word united in this context doesn't mean you say the same words. You can have a different message, but you can still be united. Do you agree with that? So we know in this context, and you agree, that the word united doesn't mean you say the same thing. Okay, so let's go back to 241 paragraph 1. And here it says, these united with him in the cry. You've got the same word united. So what's your evidence to say that he's changed his message? What's your evidence to say that he's now said, he doesn't say Babylon, he says bridegroom? What's the evidence? Because I don't think you can use the word united to do that proof. Because we've already given an example where united doesn't mean they say the same message. And the fact that he spoke, stopped speaking, then speaks again, that isn't a proof, I don't think. It just says he had a rest. Brother William, what are you saying?
I think for me, like, the angel just brings him, but the first angel still has his message. The message does not.
The second, you mean?
Yeah, the second angel rather. He does not change his message. He has his message when they know it. He only joins with the number of angels who are the midnight cry.
Okay, so I've got your hands. What I'm saying is, first of all, if you read the passage, it's not clear. The only things that you have is he speaks with the angels, and then there's this uniting of the cry.
Yeah.
With proof text united in another scenario, and we all agree when the second and the third unite, they're still saying things different. So we agree with that. So we don't have a proof to say united means you change your message. So that my other argument is the definition of an angel is not their clothes or what they look like. The definition of the angel is the message that they give. And I'm saying if the first angel said fear God in the Millerite history, then in 1920 the first angel said let's all be happy, then it was no longer the first angel. It becomes a brand new message. In fact, you can't even track it anymore. So I'm saying an angel is defined by its message. And if this second angel changed his message here, then he would no longer have been the second angel. He would have had to be different. Just like the first angel didn't change, I'm saying the second angel didn't change. My brother?
I'm seeing enlightenment in the cry, but not the specific message they are giving. If each and every individual maintains the message that they are having, but the enlightenment is in the crying. And I've seen some parallels bringing the second passage you've just read to the one that you're reading. With this one, you see that the light attended this angel penetrated everywhere as he cried mightily with a strong voice. And we also see in the passage that we are reading, the musical voices of these angels seemed to reach everywhere. And from the first angel's message, we have seen that the light is equal to the voice. So we see parallels in both passages. And that will bring us now to an understanding of who these angels are in the first passage that we were reading with. If I jump a little bit back, the musical voices of these angels seem to reach everywhere. So these angels will have to go a little bit higher to see who these specific angels are. And these angels, and these united with him in the cry. So I will see that the message that these angels are having will be different with the hymn. Is the next passage tells us that the musical voices of these angels penetrated everywhere and separate, just as in the other passage we have a separate voice.
Kefis?
Okay. If we read the last line we are reading, it says, I saw a number of angels conversing, the one who cried, "My name is fallen." And these angels united with him, the one that cried. And if we go to the one in 277, the angels are going to unite their voice with the So I want to use an illustration. For example, if you have been doing your work through history, like from one point, and you're continuing, you are still doing your work, and then I come with my work and join you, and we unite. So both of us are continuing with our work, but we run. I don't know to use the word parallel or contemporary. So this is the same thing that I'm seeing here in this now. The second angel is doing his work, and it's done through history with his message. But this other one that Christ, they come in what we normally call combining and sort of blending. So they run through, all of them doing their work, but they are united.
Okay.
So initially I was also reading the way he's reading it, and I'm also maybe reading it the same way. So that phrase united with him in the cry, for me I think how he reads it is the correct way. But I think what you've shown in United in 277 makes sense, but if you read this phrase here, it says that this united with him in the cry. It seems to me that this second angel who came first makes the cry, then the journey. That's what it seems like. But I think what again I'm thinking is later in Revelation 18, 1-3, the angel comes to repeat the message of the second, and he does not repeat with behold the brethren coming, but he repeats with Babylon is fallen, is fallen. And I think that solves to me that it doesn't change, it remains the same.
So we've got this picture work here, which is what you've just described, and what I'm suggesting is that when it comes here, Revelation 14, it's flying through the midst of heaven. It doesn't say that in Revelation 14, but Ellen White indicates that. And then in Revelation 18, it lands on the earth. And I'm saying there's a symbolic significance of that, which I'm not saying I understand what it means, but what I'm arguing is that when this angel came down, it never left earth. It's been proclaiming this message all the way through, and we teach that. We teach that the second angel is present truth all the way through this history. He didn't stop somewhere in the Millerite line after August and never speak again and suddenly comes back. He's been saying Babylon is fallen for the past 100 and whatever years that is, 120, 30 years. He's never stopped doing that. And the message that he gave is always the same. All that changes here, he says, when I spoke at the beginning, it was only this limited group, and their doctrines weren't that bad. But now it's a much bigger audience because the cage is now full, and on top of that, there's a whole heap of other doctrines now. So it's just escalated, but it's the same message. And this fall of Babylon has just gone from bad to worse. So I'm in agreement with what you said.
Yeah, but what you've taught us again is the reading. I think it reads like you first does the drive and the journey in this context.
Yeah, but what you haven't stated in that, I agree. If you said the way you just expressed it, he first said he's cried, then the others join him. I agree with that statement. But what you're actually meaning to say is, when they join him, he changes. That's what you're reading in that sentence. And you're reading in that sentence because it says, they're united with him in the cry. And when you unpackage that, they unite him in the cry. You're reading into that, and I'm not saying it's difficult to read, is when they unite in the cry, that means they're all crying the same thing. The cry that they're all doing is, behold, the bridegroom cometh. That's how we're reading that phrase. And so, when you come to a problematic sentence like this one, which is why we're discussing this, because I know it's a problematic sentence, I want to know how we read that sentence. So, our problem as teachers is that we have lots of things to deal with. If we were just grammar, if it was grammar was our saviour, then I would be instructing all of us to take a proper course in English, to restudy English. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but what I am saying is grammar is only one of the tools that we have to use. We have lots of tools. We have to use grammar, proof texting, progression, line upon line. We have lots of them to deal with, and they all have their part to play. So if it was just grammar, I think I'd probably lose the argument. Because I can read, I can see what you're saying, which is why I highlighted it. At the beginning of the class, this morning class, I said I'm only going to skip through. I'm just going to tell you what I think about the first angel. And the reason I said that is because it's obvious. It reads so plainly that the first angel and the first angel is the same person, and all that happens is people join him. So I see that easy. This one, we slowed down and went back to normal teaching. Everyone can see that you've got one angel and many angels. That's easy to see. But what's not so easy to see is when these join him, does he retain his voice or does he change his message? And that's not easy to see because the way she writes it can trip you up. Hence my questioning on it. That's why we're spending time looking at that, is because I know the grammar says it that way. So the people who said, no, he retains his voice, they were using other arguments than the grammar. And I didn't, hence I asked them what their logic or their proof was. And my proof is, I'm saying, if you want to use the grammar, you could proof text united, and in another chapter in the same book, which is one of the ways we should proof text, ideally, is see how the author of the book uses the word united. In that case, united doesn't mean saying the same message, it means just coming together, like Brother Kefas was suggesting. And the other logic that I've used is to say an angel is defined by his message, not by his appearance, not by when he comes into history, it's by what his message is. So if his words change, he then becomes a different angel, I'm saying. He wouldn't join them, he would become them, if that makes sense. They're defined by their message, bridegroom, he's defined by his message, Babylon. And if he was to join with them, which meant he changes his message, we would no longer have a second angel. At least here. We'd have to develop an argument that he came back into history, but he disappeared out of history. With that thought, in 1798, the King of the South delivers a deadly wound to the King of the North. We all agree with that. Then in 1989, the King of the North begins to retaliate back against the King of the South. We now teach that he delivers a deadly wound back by the time you get to the Sunday law. If you want to say Panium, I'm okay. Where was the King of the South in between those two histories? From 1798 to 1989. Don't know how many years that is. Where was the King of the South? Brother Robert? The reason I'm asking is in this one I'm saying the second angel never left. Always been there. What about the King of the South? Has the King of the South always been there from 1798 to 1989? First tell me the answer, and then the logic, depending on what your answer is.
Not sure.
No, I'm not going with that answer. You're a recognised teacher in this movement. You can't say, oh, you're not sure. Yes, what?
Your question is he still there?
So he comes in 1798, and when he comes in 1798, is he all the way through to 1989?
There are some changes which happen in between, but I think he's there.
He's there all the way through. Okay, so let me ask you a different question. Let me make sure I get my verse correct. I think it's verse 24. Which chapter?
Daniel.
Okay, good. So we're all there. Daniel 11. Yeah, verse 24. And he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Everybody know what that's talking about? Does anybody not know what that's talking about? Sister Jackie, do you know what that's talking about? You've got to tell me, you can't just be silent. Because when you don't say anything, I'm thinking, she knows what that means, it's all good, let's move on. So you don't know what that means. Okay. Sister Emma, tell us what 11:24, he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Tell us what that means. Can you hear that? Sister Jackie, can you hear? She can't even hear you.
It's talking about pagan Rome, and the time there is a prophetic time, so it's 360, it's a year, which is 360 days, but within 360 years. It's talking about pagan Rome, ruling over these devices. That's the power over the earth from that place for 360 years, which will mark from 31 BC to 330 AD.
All done? Did that help? No. My brother? Explain to Sister Jackie.
Okay, 8 verse 24 is giving us the history of pagan Rome.
Before you carry on, what are the rules of engagement between teacher and student? Sister Emma? What's the rules? What's the methodology? What's the system?
To get them to. Context in the words.
The first thing you do is explain it. You explain it simply. The first, I'm not saying you didn't. I'm just saying, well, I'm saying, she's saying you didn't because she didn't get it. The first way you do it is a simple. Then you go to the medium, and then you go to the complex. So the first thing you've got to do is give it simply to them. So you carry on.
So, you want me to give the whole answer of that question?
Just that portion, because I want to ask another question to Brother Robert.
So here he's telling us the time in which pagan Rome was ruling for a time which is 360 years, and later at the end of the 360 years is going to forecast his devices against the stronghold, which is the stronghold is is the capital of the city, or where their power is, and he's going to remove the capital city from where it goes to.
Did that help? No, that didn't help either. What I find interesting is your interpretation of that passage is different to Sister Emma's. Did you pick that up, Sister Emma?
I lost what you said.
Did you see it was different? Brother Matthew, did you hear it different? Did anybody hear it different?
Yes.
I heard it different. What did he say?
He said that the forecasting of the stronghold is after 360.
He said that at the end of the 360, he's going to damage or hurt Rome. That's what he said. That's what you said? So that's different to what Sister Emma said. Okay, so I didn't want to, we'll not worry about that. Okay, so let's just try and quickly address this issue. We know that each of these four powers are going to rise up, rule the world, and then they're going to be destroyed. Do you agree with that? Okay? All that last part of the verse he's talking about is when pagan Rome is going to do its ruling, when it rules supremely. Yep. Now you know that Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, he begins his rulership at a certain time period, but they've been around for a long time before. You agree with that? Assyrians, who were just another faction or another royal family in the Babylonian Empire. So Babylon has been around a long time before they become the supreme rulers. Greece is the same. Greece has been around for a long time before Alexander the Great comes and rules, like the premier ruler. Pagan Rome is the same. So all that verse is teaching, that last part, is where you mark pagan Rome beginning to rule the whole world without any challenges. But pagan Rome has been around for a long time before, and when you get to the end of that, pagan Rome is still around. It doesn't die. It's not lost. It's still around. Does that make sense? So you've got pagan Rome in three stages. A preparation stage, when it rules, and then sort of like when it dies slowly. And each of those powers, you can mark them all exactly the same way. They all have these three phases. They rise up to power, they're in power, and then they come out of power. So this verse is just teaching you when it's in power. Now you know 7 times. 7 times is 2,520 years. You know how to do that calculation? Because the time is 360 days. It's 1 year. Yes or no? 1 year is how many days? 360. So you know that. So if I do time times and half a time, that's 3.5 times. That's 3.5 years. And you times that by 360, you get what number? 1260. So you know all about that. So this passage says how long? So how many years is that? So all that verse is telling you is in those 3 phases: preparation to rule, the ruling, and then the dying. It just tells you how long he's going to rule for. So how long did pagan Rome rule for? Which is how many years? So we've got a line now, which is 360 years. All we need to do is mark the beginning and the end. And the beginning and the end is 31 BC, and the end is 330 AD. So all you need to know is what those events were, what that history was. So that's all we would do. So that's all that verse is teaching. It's teaching when pagan Rome is ruling supremely. So I'm going to put a symbol of a crown here. It rules supremely here. So that's a simple version of what that verse is saying. Does that make sense? So it just says when does pagan Rome rule without anybody interfering or anybody challenging it? So, Brother Robert, you know that 31 BC is the Battle of Actium, and that is the king of the south. This is Daniel 8:9. Daniel 8:9, he goes from the east, the glorious land, to the south, king of the south. You know Cleopatra? Yeah? This is Cleopatra. When pagan Rome destroys or kills Cleopatra, that marks when there's no opposition to Rome. Who is Cleopatra, my brother? Who's Cleopatra? No one can hear you.
I'm saying she was the wife to Antiochus.
No. I'm not saying she is or she isn't. They're still not hearing you. You've got to sing it. You know, I know you can speak loud. He said she was the wife of Antiochus. I'm not saying you're wrong historically, but I want a prophetic significance of who Cleopatra is.
It's the king of the south.
So, Cleopatra is the king of the south. Another perspective of who Cleopatra is, not king of the south perspective. Who is Cleopatra? Sorry? She's Greece. Cleopatra is the last part of Greece. So Cleopatra is here, if you like, the last part of Greece, and once you destroy Cleopatra, Greece is now totally finished, and then who comes? Rome. But Rome has been around for a lot longer. So when this statue has different metals, what it doesn't give is there's an overlap. As Greece is going down, Rome is coming up. All this is marking is the very last steps of the overlap. Does that make sense? Greece has finally come down and Rome has fully come up. So that's the cut-off point. So the king of the south, Cleopatra, what happened to the king of the south from here all the way to 1798? Where was the king of the south there in that history?
Sort of dormant. Okay.
It wasn't there?
It was there.
When you say it was there, where can you track it? Because when I go back to my original question and I say where is it between 1798 and 1989, and you said it's there, my next question I'm going to say is where, and you're going to be able to start tracking it, because I know you're going to come up with some argument to track it. So then you have to give some argument, and you're going to track the king of the south.
So I would say the king of the south is there, but for me to be able to track the next time that I see the king of the south after that 1 BC is in the French Revolution. So
1798.
Yes, 1798. So I believe he was there, but sort of hard to see him because.
So why do you believe he was there if you can't even give any shred of evidence or logic that he's there?
He's defeated there, so he's not manifesting himself in any nation until 1788.
So how comes he's not dead? Did he get killed here? So he gets killed. So when you meant dormant, you didn't mean he was dead. You meant he was still alive, but he's sort of secretly hiding somewhere.
I think he's defeated there, he's killed, but he's going to resurrect in the future.
Okay, so
That's what I'm saying.
that's 11, what verse? Which verse? 11.
Resurrect. 40.
14?
40. You're asking?
Revelation 11.
Or Revelation 11,
8.
6, 8, around that history.
Okay, we'll find out the verse so you can write it in your notes. If you're lost, I'll bring you back in a second.
think it's 6.
6? Just tell us the verse number. 7. Okay? So, when he dies here, is he dead? And then he's going to resurrect? So he's not there for that 1,000 years. Nearly 2,000 years. Okay, so let's just if you're not familiar with that history, we'll come back. I just want to get people up to speed with what we just said. The king of the north and the king of the south are who? Which empire? It's Greece. So you've got king of the north, king of the south is Greece. Somewhere in these verses, pagan Rome is going to take hold of the crown of the king of the north. So this is Greece, and somewhere along this history, in between where Greece is, pagan Rome's going to come, and it's going to be called the king of the north. It's going to take that title from Greece. Are we okay with that? It then has to do what before it can rule supremely? Has to finally destroy Greece, and what's left of Greece? King of the south. So here's the king of the south, which is this here, 31, and once that's destroyed, then this is the 360 years of pagan Rome ruling supremely. So this here is 31 BC, it's the Battle of Actium, and this is Cleopatra. So Cleopatra is a Grecian princess. She comes all the way from the line of General Ptolemy, and she's the last part of Greece. So once you've finished Greece off, then you can rule supremely. You're here at the knees, if you like. So once the king of the south is dead, you don't see it ever again. We then go from pagan Rome to papal Rome. We've said that pagan Rome rules for a time. What year is that, Sister Jackie? Sorry? Can't hear? 330, good. So that's 330. When does the papacy begin to rule supremely? When does papacy begin to rule supremely? When is the papacy ruling the whole earth? 538. Who's in between this history, this 200 years? What's happening in the 200 years then? Sister Jackie? What's happening in these 200 years? Pagan Rome ruled up to 330, papacy. So this is the end, and this is the start. This is the end of pagan, and this is the start of papal. What's happening in the 200 years? Preparation. So the pagan Rome is doing what? Pagan Rome is dying, and papal Rome is rising. So that's what we're talking about, those three segments. There's an arising, a ruling, and then there's a dying. So it's dying, takes 200 years to die, and then the papacy takes 200 years to rise, if we can use that argument. Because 330 is what king? What emperor? This is Constantine. This is when the papacy begins to interact with whom? Church and? This is church and state. This is compromise or pergamos. If you're okay with that. This church and state begins here. Now it's fully developed. And then the papacy will rule, and then it will go through that same cycle. So, when you get to 1798, just before, what date do you want to have, Brother Robert? 1770? 93. So we'll go with 1793. This is France with its revolution. And 11:7, this is Revelation, says I didn't hear you.
A beast ascending.
It says there's a beast that comes out of a bottomless pit. And Ellen White tells you the beast that comes out of a bottomless pit is what?
It's purpose. France.
Sorry?
It's France. The new manifestation.
New manifestation of the power of God. And of Satan even. The new manifestation of the power of Satan. And how many powers do that, my brother? Because he said papacy, I said no. He said France, I said no. How many powers do that? Rise up out of a bottomless pit?
And list them.
Yeah?
France. Islam. I'm familiar with only those two.
With only those two. My brother, he said Islam, chapter.
It's found in Revelation chapter 9.
Revelation chapter 9. He said France. We've already got a chapter 11. Do you know another one?
For France,
No? Another power?
I think it's papacy.
Sorry?
Papacy.
Papacy, chapter?
Chapter 3.
Sorry? Chapter 3?
No, 13.
Not 13.
17.
17. Verse?
Chapter 17 and verse number.
Verse 8, someone said it. 17:8. So we've got three powers that come out of a bottomless pit. And Ellen White defines it as a new manifestation of satanic power. So it's a new power. So here, when France is new. Brother Magic, what's new about France? Sister Emma, what's new about France?
Well, basically, papal was part of papacy.
So it was papal before, so what's it now? Atheism. And who's the premier atheistic country? Bible prophecy. Egypt. So what's new about it? What kingdom is Egypt? Sorry? So what's new about France? So France is now the king of the south. So my question to Brother Robert was, here's the king of the south and here's the king of the south. What happened to the king of the south in between that? Was it there? Was it interfering in the background somewhere, or was it just dead? So that was my question. So
I'd say dormant. It's dead.
okay, so dormant means dead, Brother Rick.
It's dead.
It's dead? So it's dead and it's now going to resurrect again. Everybody okay with that? So then I asked another question. The original question was, in 1798, you've got the King of the South, who's alive and well, and then we've got 1989, and then you've got the King of the South. This is Russia, and this is France. So I'm asking, what was the King of the South in here doing? What happens to the King of the South in between those two histories, Brother William?
I think between those two histories, the king of the south is there because what happens in 1718 is not killed. So I think it's existing now. I can use it's existing, and I think is amassing more countries, is increasing his power.
Okay, so he doesn't die, he's here. So you're saying this is different to this story. This one he died,
Yeah,
but this one he didn't.
yeah, I don't think he died. Yeah.
Okay, Brother Robert.
I think he's alive in that history.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think he's dead up to 1917.
19. So you think he's dead up to 1917? Does everybody know why he said 1917? Why 1917?
Because we saw the rise of Soviet Union from 1917.
So that's Russia. So we've got Russia here, begins to rise up and take up this role. We've all seen the studies of Sister Tess where Fatima has the vision that says, kill Russia. So that's why he's arguing that. And you're saying in between that he's dead.
When did he die?
And who killed him?
Yeah.
When did he die? And who killed him?
Died in 78.
He died in 1798. And who killed him?
France.
He killed himself? Okay. So, how does he kill himself?
So we know that before 1793 France becomes the king of the south. But 3 years later, I think when you read the Spirit of Prophecy, they leave all that and come back to the normal system.
So they become atheists and then they go back to God. They become religionists again, Christians again. So therefore, they're no longer the king of the south. They inflict a deadly wound upon themselves. Okay, so I've got some disagreements. Are we okay? Okay, so we'll pick up after breakfast. But I just want to ask another question. Hopefully, this won't make it worse. When we think about the king of the south, and we see this struggle against the king of the north, you don't see it so clearly maybe in this story here, this from 31 and before. Maybe we don't see it so clearly because the religious part of it isn't brought to view. It's just battles between the king of the north and the king of the south. But I think Brother Manjit said earlier, he used the word spiritualism. Did you use the word I used the word spiritualism. And what power is spiritualism? The dragon power. So, when we've looked through all of this, we just think about the king of the south as, atheism. But we also can run this story about the dragon power being brought to view. And I don't know if the issue of the dragon power is going to help us with this argument, because Brother Robert was very careful. He didn't want to use the word die here, or killed, but we forced him to. We forced him to use the word dead, but he wants to still hold on to the word dormant. And I think the reason he wants to use the word dormant, because he wants to use this idea of going underground. You're still alive, but you're invisible. And what we want to use is this terminology of dead, because you've got resurrection going on here. And as soon as you start thinking about the king of the south, spiritualism, which is the dragon power, then you have to maybe reconsider whether or not his argument about it being dormant as opposed to being killed and dead is an alternative way of thinking about it. So the only reason I'm mentioning that is maybe it has nothing to do with it, but maybe it might impact about how we're going to understand this story. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we give you praise and thanks for your goodness and mercy. We ask, Lord, that you would guide, direct and bless us. Help us to have a clearer understanding of your word. Help us to come together in unity. Lord, we know that you want to train a class of teachers who not only are devoted to you and love you, but that all are marching in unity and in step with one another. Even though we're here, Lord, for a very short time, already we've come to nearly the completion of 2 weeks. We only have another week together. Lord, we could have spent many, many months together. And the more time we know that we spend together, the closer we would come together. Help us, Lord, in the remaining 1/3 of our time to press even closer together, not only in our doctrinal understanding, but in our personal relationship with one another. If there are any differences between us, if there are any bad feelings, may the coming together on doctrine be the means by us putting aside our personal differences so that we might press together and work closer with each other. We know that time is short and we know that the workers are few. Please empower us to do this work. We ask a special blessing upon the food that we're to eat. In Jesus' name, amen.